Hi, and welcome to tonight's Q&A. We have a live question and answer call to go over the previous webinar that we did, which was called The Organized Couple, Master the Art of Peaceful Household Management. And I'm Rivka Slatkin.
I'm Shlomo Slatkin.
And we have Tara. Tara, are you with us?
I am with you.
Great. Tara is professional organizer extraordinaire who we turn to whenever we have any need for professional organizing. And we're so happy to have you on.
Happy to be here.
Thank you for taking extra time out of your busy schedule to go over more detail about the 5 clutter personality types that we glossed over quickly on our long, jam-packed webinar the other night. So thanks so much. We're going to go into these in more detail. Shlomo, you want to?
And we want to just thank you for being here tonight. Realize that there's a lot going on in the world right now, especially for those of us who have family and friends in Israel. And there's a lot going on, and it's a difficult time. And one of the things, at least we think, that creating more peace in your home is at least one of the things we can do, besides obviously praying and doing good deeds and helping people. That creating more peace in your home allows for, God willing, more peace in the world. So we appreciate you for being here this evening. So we want to go over the clutter personality types briefly, just to go through them, and we have some questions that people had asked about them from last time. So Tara, if you could just kind of go.
Should we ask the questions first, Shlomo? Just mention what they are. So
let's just mention what the personality types are first. If we could just mention through if you could just give a brief synopsis of each one of these, and then we'll go through some of the questions that we got.
Sure. So the 5 that we talked about the other day, and if I remember correctly, everybody got the slide handout from the other day, right, Rivka?
Right.
Yes.
Okay. So everybody should have the slide that we're looking at now, and it listed the 5 clutter types. 1, the hoarder, the rebel, the perfectionist, the sentimentalist, and the deferrer. And the hoarder, I'm just going to touch on briefly. The hoarder is really a very, very specific clutter style, and it is one that is medically diagnosed, or psychologically diagnosed is more to the point. It is a situation where your home and areas of your home have become unlivable because of the level of clutter. And there's a clutter hoarding scale and a whole bunch of different things that we can get into, but that is a true medical diagnosis, and anyone with a true hoarding disorder needs to seek help. That is something that is not usually correctable by yourself, and they are going to need support in order to make some serious changes.
And
all the other clutter styles are really just personality types or learning styles that affect our clutter in our daily life, but they're all easily manageable.
Oh, Tara, let me just interrupt you for a second. Well, first of all, is a hoarder the same as a person who's chronically disorganized? Because I know that there are organizers that specialize in chronic disorganization.
Chronic disorganization and hoarding can go hand in hand, but they typically don't.
Okay.
Typically, someone who's chronically disorganized may have a brain-based condition of some kind, an ADD, an ADHD, some depression, different things like that could feed into their chronic disorganization, but it's not typically to the level of hoarding.
Okay.
So can an organizer actually help hoarders, or do you, when you're saying they need help, they need to go to a mental health professional?
The honest reality is there's a lot of organizers out there that want to help. Those that are well trained, and I'll count myself in that category. The hoarders that I work with, and I do work with hoarders on occasion, I require them to be in therapy. They need to be in therapy a minimum of 3 months in order for me to work with them, and I need them to sign agreements between me and the therapist or psychiatrist, psychologist that they're working with, so that I can communicate directly with them. Because really, we don't want to harm the person we're trying to help. And if I don't have insight into the psychological components and they don't have insight into the behavioral components that we're working on, we could actually do more harm than good.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Because if they don't know what's going on, how the person's actually living, I could see how that's a huge chunk of missing information.
Right. And you're talking about more extreme issues. You're talking about, unsanitary conditions where living is compromised and health can be compromised. Situations if there's kids involved where social services may need to be involved for at least temporarily until the situation is improved.
Okay.
So it sounds pretty
about an
serious.
extreme circumstance.
Yeah, it sounds pretty serious because one of the questions someone asked, they said, how can we save stuff and not be considered a hoarder? But it's saving stuff and being a hoarder. It seems like there's a pretty big gap between the two.
Right. You're at opposite ends of the rainbow. Hoarder is a term that's being thrown around a lot because of some of the TV shows that make things a little bit more mainstream. Mm-hmm. But to be a hoarder, is a completely different end of the spectrum. Somebody who holds on to a lot of stuff and recognizes it is typically not a hoarder.
Okay. Great. Well, then we can continue because that one is kind of in a category of its own, I guess.
It really is. And, anybody who thinks if they're on this call and they think they're in that category and they want to explore it a little bit more, they can certainly contact me directly. And I'm happy to point them to some resources for them to get some additional help or assessments.
Okay.
So to go in things a little bit more, we've got the rebel. The rebel is a person who typically is fast-paced, they're full of ideas, and they shift very easily from one task to another. They're the chronic multitasker who is always looking for, we have a joke among some of my clients that they're always looking for the shiny squirrel. If a squirrel runs by their window, they're easily distracted from what we're doing and watching the squirrel run by the window. That's typically more of the rebel type personality. They have great systems. They're totally excited about great systems, but they never actually use them. Mm. So for them, they lose interest. They're inconsistent in their maintenance of schedules and systems. They tend to be visually oriented, but that's not a definitive. I'm generalizing with all of these categories. So people may identify with more than one category, but there's usually a dominant category that they're looking at. And a lot of times that rebel has difficulty focusing. So sometimes they can seem to be disorganized because they're jumping from one thing to the next. And they can also seem stubborn, like they're digging their heels in against the system. But a lot of times it's more of they don't see the purpose. Because they have 12 systems that they already have. Why do they need one more? Why is yours going to work versus the 12 they already have that are not working?
So being married to somebody that's a rebel, it's got to be very confusing and hard to track because that person will implement a system, I guess, and then maybe like not tell the system to the spouse or not make it possible for the spouse to kind of maintain the system, you think?
Or they never actually complete a system to the point where the spouse knows about it. So it can be the person who is the almost finished person, where you have a task list and things are 75% complete, but never 100.
Right.
So if you have a spouse who's that person and you, let's say you're the perfectionist, you're going to have trouble because they don't complete things.
Or it sounds like they're also maybe impulsive. Do you think?
Can be.
But it's hard to know probably just from this description.
It's hard to know just from this description. It can manifest itself in different ways, but that completion thing is a big one. And the switching around, the thinking the newest, latest, greatest is going to be the one.
Shlomo, do you have anything to say? I like the healing part of the rebel. Maybe that's because I maybe identify secretly with the rebel, but I like the healing part where you kind of sort of their growth edge is knowing that they're the adult now, and they don't maybe have to, they're not the child, they're the adult, and nobody's telling them what to do, and nobody's forcing them, and so they can self-motivate, right? With the goal and the pleasure of having that organized house.
I agree. I think once they have a system that can work, that you can harness them enough to understand that maintenance of that is going to be key to harmony within the home, then the motivation for them changes. It's not the shiny squirrel that they're looking for. It's the harmony that becomes the shiny squirrel.
Neat. That's great.
All right. So the perfectionist, I mean, everybody knows these people. I'm one of them. So, I'll call myself out there. We're often very organized, but sometimes perfectionists can be compartmentally organized. Sometimes you see the person who's organized at work, but not at home, or organized in their volunteer program, and they've got the binders and everything's in place, and then their home's a disaster. So sometimes perfectionism manifests itself in different ways. It doesn't necessarily be across the board. They're very self-critical. It's funny. I talk to people all the time. They're either the most organized or the least organized. And part of that is because they can be the least organized because they're so into perfectionism that they don't start something that they're not sure they can complete perfectly.
So that also ties into procrastination.
It can. It absolutely can. If they can't see that finished product in their head, they just don't start. And that can be a problem. The other one is they tend to have unrealistic expectations. So being married to perfectionists can be tough because they can expect you to be as perfect as they are, and that never works because their idea of perfect isn't actually perfect. It's what's perfect in their head.
Interesting.
They also tend to compare themselves to others all the time. So it can be a tough situation if you've got a spouse that's a perfectionist. You're not the perfectionist. They could be comparing themselves to a friend's spouse. You're not living up to the expectations because so-and-so spouse can do this, and why can't you?
Shlomo, that's a slippery slope, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, anytime spouses, why don't you talk about that for a sec? I mean, anytime spouses compare their spouse to another person's spouse, I mean, that's just a real recipe for disaster, and it can be so damaging to a relationship, right?
Right. You don't know what's going on behind closed doors. So what you see on the surface looks perfect on the surface is usually not the case. So if you're in a relationship, we always talk about being committed and really just, you're married to this person, and it's not about comparing yourself to others that would be better with someone else, because there'll always be issues. If you marry that other person, they'd also have issues. So, but I can understand why that perfectionist can get frustrated.
Absolutely. So moving on to the sentimentalist. This is the person that we typically see as the nurturer. A lot of your sentimentalists tend to have more nurturing careers. The nurses, the doctors, the social workers, the teachers, they tend to manifest it in their whole life and be sentimental about the people in their life as much as the stuff. And so they tend to be people-oriented. They're the never say no people. So you tend to see them be the volunteer and the class mom or class dad. I'm not going to single out a sex. It's more of a personality type than anything. But they're the people that can never say no, the people pleasers.
So then it's really hard with the objects in the house because it's really hard to get rid of them.
It is, because they attach their memories and their life and their accomplishments to the stuff.
They really do. I remember a client of mine, we were going through her bedroom, and she had old parenting magazines from years and years and years ago. And she started to cry because she realized she wasn't having any more kids, and just from the magazines, and it was so hard for her to think about parting with the magazines.
Right. Because there tends to be that concept of if the stuff is gone, the memory's gone.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a tough one to overcome. People struggle with that one, especially the more sentimental people who are more of a nurturing. But they also tend to take on too much, and they have poor time management is one of the characteristics that I've seen a lot of with that personality, just because they try to juggle so many things to keep everybody happy.
Mm-hmm. I can see that.
And last but not least, the defer. The defer, in my experience, tends to have a very complex thought process. They tend to think through things to an extreme. They get so much caught up in the analyzing of a problem that they don't actually execute an action. So they're extremely cautious and careful and want to make sure their decision is right. So sometimes if the defer can also be seen as the perfectionist. There's kind of a parallel there in some of the behavior, because they want the decision to be correct to the point that they'll analyze it to the point of no action.
Right.
And sometimes in organizing, these are the people who they don't want to throw something away because they're not 100% sure they're never going to need it again.
Right. How do you help them with that? That seems like it would be really hard.
My rule of thumb is there is no such thing as someday on the calendar. If you can't point to a day on the calendar and say, I'm going to use this by X date, or I'm going to use this for this upcoming family event, camping trip, you name it, then chances are you don't need it.
Right. But we talked about how actually being able to do that is also being aware of what's going on underneath the surface. So if they don't realize the emotional part of it, right, then it's going to be hard to even do that with your encouragement of it's not a day on the calendar. Like they first need to know, right? Like what's going on.
Well, that's where, therapy or coaching comes into play, of digging to the true questions and what are your ultimate goals. Somebody asked me the great question at a party this past weekend of how do you make people get rid of stuff? And I say, I don't make people get rid of stuff. That's not my job.
Right.
My job is to help you achieve the goal that you're trying to achieve. It's not what I want to see. It's what you want to see your life look like, both physically and mentally. And I'm sure Shlomo does, analyzes couples the same way, in the sense of, it's not what I want for your marriage. It's what you want for your marriage. And let's work through your goals to get to the end result that makes sense. So it's us asking the tough questions that get you to that end goal.
Right, exactly. Because they're there. You're there to help them and meet their needs. Not to impose your own ideas on them. So that's great.
Sure, that's why I love working with you, because we're so on the same page. It's right. It's so not about just reading some organizing tips and doing this. It's so much more. And that's why I love this blend of the two of our fields, because I really think it's a game changer for people.
I'd like to know a little bit more about, because when you were explaining it, I started thinking, well, maybe I'm more than one. And that was actually some of the questions that we received, that what if someone thinks they have more than one type? How would you explain that? How would you work with them?
It's very possible. It's very possible to cross over between different styles. And it can be situational. I've noticed with a lot of my clients, when under stress, they're one type. When they're at their, I'll say normal for lack of a better term, when they're at their base level, then they're a different type. So it's more of adapting to where you are right now and what you're trying to achieve. Sometimes people are like, well, I'm probably 75% this, 25% that. Well, let's go with the 75. Because the 75 is probably what's driving your life. And that's what we need to work on right there. If you're not going to work with an individual, like myself or like you, and we're going on the blanket stuff of a workshop like what we're doing right now, then go with the 75, and that should get you a lot of the way towards where you're going.
Okay, so really you're saying whatever the dominant I guess pattern or that you have, that's the way, that's what to tackle first, and then
Exactly. And then if you need a tweak, that's part of why we have this one-on-one session that we've offered with the boot camp coming up, is that, not everything fits into a cookie cutter. And so they have the opportunity to talk with me directly to tweak those last little 10% that maybe we couldn't address individually because they have a really specific situation.
Right. You mean couldn't address in a group?
Right. In a group, in a generalization. Yeah.
Right. Awesome. Yeah, that was really good that you added that. Thank you, Tara, because it's a very valuable thing that that you saw, that I'm not going to be able to, customize something for everybody in a group. So they can.
Right. Well, and the perfectionist in me wants everybody to get to that finish line, whatever that is for them. So I want to help them reach that finish line.
Right. Shlomo, was there another question, or is anybody on the line? Do you want to type? If you have a question, feel free to type in the chat that you have a question, and we will get to your question and answer it. Shlomo, what other questions do you want to choose from? Let me just.
Well, how do you, if you know that you have one of these issues, how do you, or your spouse does? I guess it's helpful now if you have one of these personality types, you can learn about what you can do. But what if your spouse has one of these? How can you get them on board, or how can you help them in a way that doesn't step on their toes? Let's say your spouse is a perfectionist. How can you help them get organized?
Well, do the third column, can they follow a little bit of that? Like helping their spouse, remind them, or like if you're married to a perfectionist, you can kind of help your spouse that they can you can give them permission, or they can give themselves permission to start with 20%, or is that
right? I guess as long as you talk about it and that you're working on this together. If you think that, if you're complaining that your spouse is disorganized, and say, "Oh, I learned this thing. I learned that you're probably a sentimentalist. So, I think you should just choose the best things to throw out." That's not necessarily going to work. That's what we talked about, the importance of learning safe conversations, because you can't just go in and use these,
you can't
characterize your spouse and then start, implementing based on this.
Right. That's the danger of kind of playing therapist, I guess.
Right. But I think Tara was saying last time, Tara, you were saying that it's helpful for people to know what their spouse is so that they can be a little bit more sensitive to where their spouse might be coming from and why they're having a difficult time getting organized.
Exactly. And to help you see, okay, as we'll talk about in the boot camp, we'll go through these into more depth and true organizing tips and tricks to work with different personality types. It's going to help you see if you're a person that needs, calendars and structure and color coding, but your spouse doesn't, they can probably follow your system. You can't necessarily follow theirs. So it's one of those things where it's a melding of systems that's going to make a family run more smoothly.
Great. So Shlomo, the conversation, like when does the conversation need to happen? Like, so say what your spouse is. Do you tell them that? Do you just kind of secretly know it? Like, what do you do with that information?
Well, number one, it helps you be more compassionate to their situation, and not feel that they're, purposely trying not to get organized to spite you. But at some point, once you learn how to talk, once you can talk to them and make a time to speak about the issue that is upsetting you, you can say, I was learning a little bit about different organizational types. Is something, would you be open to talking about it with me? Would you be open to be hearing? Because I thought maybe some of this could help us, and it would help our relationship if we could get more organized.
And could you also say something like, I know that I am a deferrer, and I know that that makes your life difficult, and I want to learn how to be a better spouse. And so I'm learning about my personal clutter personality type because I want to be a better wife or husband to you. Do you think
Right. So taking responsibility for your role and realizing that you have your own personality type. Right. So that's the more you can do not to put your spouse on the defensive and make it look like you're trying to blame them, the better. So like our example that we had in the previous webinar, we talked about the situation with the magazines and how we had different clutter personality types that, if we were to have talked about it in that way and realize how each other's clutter personality type affects the other, then it would lead to a more fruitful discussion.
Great. Well, you're going to obviously talk more about it on the boot camp.
Yeah, we will. That's definitely one of the things we're going to focus on, how to create safe conversations about anything. And this will definitely help you with organizing because, as we said, can be a touchy subject.
Great.
Right.
Tara, did you
Absolutely.
have any more that you wanted to add about these types?
I just want to add like one quick little thing. There's typically a more organized spouse and a less organized spouse. And one of the things that usually surprises my clients when I come in, the more organized spouse thinks I'm going to be on their side, so to speak, and convince the less organized spouse to get organized. What they realize when we actually go through the home is the systems need to be in a place for the person working it. And as I do with who's more organized, who's less organized, it's who's working that system. So if the less organized spouse is the one who's managing the paperwork and paying the bills, then the system needs to be put in place for that person to follow.
Mm.
And it's not about, whose side's on what. It's about who's managing the systems, because we need to customize things for that personality style and that clutter style and that learning style. So it's one of those things like Shlomo, you're saying, owning the situation. Whoever's working the system is the one who owns whatever's going on there. And that's who we cater to.
That's really good. Because then it's not a competition, which sometimes it can be, especially if one spouse is a perfectionist,
Right.
or the rebel. So,
but nobody can be the entire board of directors in a family. Nobody's the CEO, the CFO, the CIO. Do you know what I'm saying? They're shared roles within a family.
That makes sense.
Right, and everybody has to learn where they can be most efficient and help the greater good of the family.
Exactly, and that's that's one of the things we'll address again in the boot camp is determining your roles within the family so that everybody can be in charge of their department.
That's really good. So, does anybody have any questions before we address what exactly is going to be taught on the boot camp? Because we talked about a few things, but I just want to make sure, does anyone have any specific questions that you need answered right now? Otherwise, I'm going to share my screen so I can show exactly what we're going to cover on the Organized Couple Bootcamp, which starts this Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you can't make it, there will always be a recording. So that's good.
And we're really excited about this program. We really think it can be a game changer for your relationship because it's not only going to help you with organizing, it's also going to help you with your marriage. One of the things that I found that couples walk into a relationship and they're not aware of how relationships work, and they don't have the skills necessary to work together. And a lot of those are relationship skills, but also skills like organizing. That some simple skills that if couples had would lead to less conflict in the relationship. So, I'm excited to hear that Tara's going to share with us a lot of tips, practical things that will help you get more organized and learn how to be more effective. And some of the things that are typical problems in a relationship, whether it's clutter or tardiness, not getting dinner on the table, all of these things, we're going to learn some practical strategies to help make this a little easier, especially with how to get your children involved in families. So I want to go over a few different things. We're going to learn that there are only 4 choices. You may think there are more, but only 4 choices for every piece of paper in your home, and how to actually be able to tame that paper. I guess we're getting less mail these days. More things are electronic, but there's still a lot of clutter. Connect with each other again via the 10 ways to improve your love life. And that's actually going to have to do with organizing. Understand the 5 steps to organize any room in your home, and finally be able to become clutter-free. So that's going to give you a great plan to be able to kind of tackle your house and go through the rooms. The 4 keys to being organized, like the back of your hand, you're going to know those when you walk out of the 3-week boot camp. The 1 secret that every family needs to do to create harmony. And then the 3-step no-fail script for communicating about anything, even hot button topics. And there'll be much more you'll learn about as well, but these are only some of the things that we're going to learn about these 3 weeks. So they're going to be related to spatial organization, time management, and then of course, learning some basic relationship skills and learning how to communicate.
And there's going to also be more on the clutter personality types, because that's kind of a good theme throughout, to make it customizable. So that's going to kind of be with us the whole time. So
right. And we're extending the bonuses to Thursday morning. So if you do register between now and Thursday morning, because some of you are listening to the recording, you'll be able to receive the bonuses. And one of the bonuses Sarah mentioned was a 45-minute complimentary organizing session, which is great because you're going to really be able to take whatever you learn in the boot camp and, as Tara said, to have it tailored and tweaked for your particular needs. Because although this information is helpful to everyone, everybody has their own unique areas in which they could benefit from having some additional coaching. So Tara has been gracious to volunteer her time, 45 minutes of her time to speak with you about your personal organizing questions. Another one of the bonuses that we're offering is $150 off tickets to the Getting the Love You Want workshop in Baltimore, Maryland. This is a wonderful weekend workshop with David and Donna Bowman, who we're having them presented, and you're going to get a savings, so it's going to only be $645 if you decide to go. We do have some limited spaces available, so whoever signs up first and signs up, they can get to the
we will email as soon as we receive the boot camp registration. Then we'll email you the custom coupon code for the workshop.
And then finally, the digital copy of our Marriage Mastery program. And this is kind of a DIY marriage program that you can do at home, whether you have a good marriage you want to make great, whether your marriage is in crisis, or you're a pre-married couple that wants to just start off on the right foot. This program is extremely helpful in teaching you some basic principles of relationships and also some concrete skills that you can apply right away. And then finally, we're going to give you the copy of all the slides we use for the bootcamp classes. So these are all the bonuses that you can get if you register by Thursday morning. And again, the bootcamp itself consists of 3 classes, an hour each. And you'll be able to email us in between classes with any questions that you have. The bootcamp costs $147. It can be paid in 6 monthly installments via PayPal credit. And if you go to this page at the top, we're sharing the marriagerestorationproject.com/organize-couple-bootcamp. And we'll send you this in the email as well. If you go to that URL and you go to the bottom, you can register. And if you let us know when you registered, we'll be sure to get you your bonuses as well.
So any other questions or comments before we close? It was really nice to have you on. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule, everybody, to be on. Please feel free to just chat, type anything in the chat box if you have any further questions, and we will see you on Thursday night. Shlomo, you wanted to add anything, or Tara?
No, I look forward to seeing everybody Thursday.
It should be a lot of fun, Tara. Every time we have time on the phone, we don't get enough phone time, I don't think.
We'll have to go out to dinner soon.
We will. I think that's where I saw you last, is at a restaurant.
You're exactly right.
I think that restaurant is no longer going to be kosher soon, actually, so we can't go there anymore.
We'll have to pick a new place for you.
Yeah, we will. So, Shalom.
Okay, great. So we look forward to being in touch. And, I learned a lot tonight, and I hope that you did too. And we're looking forward to really giving you tools to really transform your relationship, because, as much as it seems difficult for things to really change in a marriage, and a lot of couples are walking around with, not too much hope, there are practical, concrete things that you can do. And I definitely think that this, as I said last time, a lot of the conflict that couples have is related to some of these organizational issues. And if we could get both spouses on board and really learning how to implement some of these systems, I think that you have a lot more easier house. I mean, I know a lot of the stress that we have is not that we're disorganized, but just figuring out how to get kids involved and control of the clutter when you have a lot of people in the house.
And plus, we work together.
Right.
I know some of the people, that
they want to learn how to work together with their spouse.
Right,
also,
when you're co-business owners. By the way, that just made me think: can a person take this boot camp if their spouse is not on board? Can they be successful?
Certainly, because,
and I want to know from Tara also:
Tara,
can they be successful?
I mean, I think it's one step in the way, and the more aware you are of what's out there to help get organized, and you can become more aware of the different styles. Shlomo may or may not agree with me, but sometimes you can work around people in a way that you making a change helps them see that change is positive.
Oh, I believe
we
that
definitely,
100%.
yeah, definitely.
Because I know sometimes you, Shlomo, get a little nervous when I rearrange furniture, and I have the visual skills to know how the room will look and that it'll look awesome when I'm done. But so I kind of try to do it when you're not there.
We haven't done it since we moved. We haven't really done that.
Right. But I know that it stresses you out. So I'm cognizant of, if I'm going to do it, I really don't do it when you're around necessarily. And then I know when you come back, you're like, wow, this looks amazing. But I know that if I would kind of go through the process and work, while you're there, and you'd be stressed, and it'd be, I just.
Right. Thank you. I appreciate that.
But I wouldn't recommend organizing other people's stuff
for sure.
Right.
Just kind of general family stuff.
Right.
But even if you're the one, even if you're the one who's not organized, who's going to take the boot camp, let's say you have a hard time, you're on the call because you want to learn how to get dinner on the table. So, even if you do it without your spouse, it's definitely going to help you. You're going to learn strategies that will help you become, more organized for yourself. So as Tara was saying, if you're the organized one, it will help you understand and be more aware of the disorganized spouse and help you work around it, or make the change that you want in the relationship that will maybe have a ripple effect. And then if you're the disorganized spouse, then, or the less organized spouse, then this will definitely be helpful for you. And then even if you feel like you're fairly organized, just learning some of the relationship skills will also be helpful.
By the way, I also wanted to say that, Shlomo, you talked about a marriage that doesn't have any, people feel like kind of hopeless.
Yeah.
With organizing, when you clear out stuff, you make way for new positive energy to flow. Tara, I know you probably talk about that all the time. So if you can work together on removing some of the old patterns, old habits, and old stuff in, various rooms of the house, especially rooms where you and your spouse, are in your bedroom or whatever, it will make room for a new positive energy to flow. Don't you agree, Tara?
100%. I've seen some of the most amazing shifts of thinking that happen when they're like, I don't like this chair. It was my mother-in-law's. She died 10 years ago. And, they finally say, this doesn't fit with what I want for decorating for my future. My kids aren't interested. I should get rid of it. And once you give people permission to get rid of it, they go, oh my God, I'm so glad I got rid of that. It was just weighing me down emotionally to have something in my house that I didn't love. And I only kept it out of guilt.
Right. That, very freeing.
Very.
Very freeing. Let me switch my screen real quick because somebody wanted me to just review before we close. We'll just go over it would probably benefit you to listen to our recording because we really went into more detail. But tonight we talked about more in depth about the hoarder, the rebel, the perfectionist, the sentimentalist, and the deferrer. And Tara really educated us on, who those people are and what to do if you find yourself or your spouse, kind of doing these things. So I invite you to listen to the recording.
Yeah, we're going to email that out
in just a moment,
shortly, so that you'll be able to listen to it. If you came in the middle of the call, then you'll be able to hear that. And you should also have the copy of the slide as well. But she did a pretty good job explaining it.
Yeah.
Also, great. So we're looking forward to, unless anyone else has any questions, we're looking forward to having everyone join us in the boot camp on Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern. And again, if you go to the URL that we had, you can sign up and you can get those bonuses, which alone are worth it.
It's going to be awesome. So we look forward to having you. Have a great night, everybody. Stay safe. Take care.
Good night.
Good night.